Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is Wine with Dr. Wendy on Wednesday nights. We have a very exciting show for you today because we're talking about parents and romance. Yes, parents can still be romantic. Didn't you know that? But it gets a little bit more complicated when you have children in the house. I have some very exciting guests today. Remember, I'm here from Los Angeles, California. There's my producer, Laura Hampikian. Where are you, Laura? From Boise, Idaho. We also have Dr. Tammy Nelson, author of The New Monogamy, as well as Getting the Sex You Want. She's in Connecticut. And Leana Greene, founder of Kids in the House, the greatest parenting resource online for you guys. Leana is from the beautiful beaches of Malibu, California, as you can tell. Actually, she's from Sweden originally, but welcome, everybody. I want to start off with a question for Leana. You have so many parents who go to your site day in, day out. What are the most common relationship questions they ask?
I think the biggest concern is losing their sex life after they have a baby. You know, everybody goes through that, first year of the incredible change of having a new baby. So what would be your great relationship advice to a couple who just had a baby, Wendy?
Well, of course, I would say long-term monogamy is filled with phases and stages, and sometimes we have to adjust our expectations and know that things change, but they can come back. Dr. Tammy, tell me what the best advice you give to parents with a new baby is.
Well, certainly in the initial phases of a monogamous relationship, there's a lot of attraction because you're in the longing phase. There's like a space between you. Attraction happens in the space in between you when you're still longing for each other and curious. After you have a baby, you're in the safety phase when you're trying to create safety for your relationship. And that's not really the time when there's any longing for each other. You're pretty much longing for sleep. And that's totally normal. Yeah, and it's important to normalize that for each other. And if you're going to have any sex, it's usually what I call maintenance sex or sweatpants sex. It's nice, it's wonderful, it's makes you each feel connected, but it may not be like hot erotic sex like you had in the beginning. And I think what you said is really important. It doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. Remember that you will get back to that erotic stage of your relationship again. It's not gone forever.
And also in the early stages, there are some real physiological changes that happen to a woman's body. I mean, even though every OB out there says, oh, you can have sex after 6 weeks, there are plenty of women who do not want to have sex 6 weeks after giving birth. It's just too uncomfortable. And if they're breastfeeding, their hormones may have changed things. So there's lots of physiological changes, but that doesn't mean you can't be close with your partner and still set up time, because the beauty of sex isn't always just that it's a great orgasm. It's the health benefits often are just the touch, the cuddling, the being close, the stroking, the reminding each other that you're there to exchange care. All right, Tammy, let's move on to, now you've got toddlers, you've got young kids in the house, they're barging in rooms, they give you absolutely no privacy. What is your suggestion for couples?
Well, my suggestion is don't give up the fact that you are more than just roommates. Your kids want to see that you're not just friends. They get it. They know that mom and dad are more than just buddies. And that's okay. Don't be afraid to kiss in front of the kids, to hold hands, to snuggle, to show them that moms and dads do that. That's really fine. When your kid walks in the room, don't just stiffen and pull away to show them that there's something wrong with that. No, stay cuddled up on the couch. Make out in front of your kid. Don't have sex in front of them. That's not what I'm saying. No. But it's okay to show them that you are still romantically interested in each other.
That's really good advice. Leana, one of the trends that I read about a lot is the idea of scheduling sex. And while some people think this isn't romantic, your users and your consumers on your website at kidsinthehouse.com do schedule sex a lot, don't they? Do you hear this?
Yeah, I hear that, and a lot of people say that trying to time the time you go to bed and going to bed together increases the chances of you having sex. But I think it's more complicated than that. I think that can get very stifling too. I think that if you can kind of spice it up with like doing something different, like surprise your partner, or even sometimes empathy, to even be able to say, you know, it's really tough, and you know, or to make the other person feel better about having a really tough day, can kind of really get it going too. There's nothing more sex than empathy, right?
I think so too. That someone else can understand, even understand your frustration at not getting as much sex as you would like, can feel good. Tammy, what would you add to that?
Tammy, do you guys think that scheduling that date night is the key, or what do you think it takes?
Well, I love what you said, Leana. I agree. There's nothing sexier than empathy. And I also like what Wendy said, that it works both ways, you know, to understand, if we're talking about a heterosexual couple, and to understand that for men, you know, having sex can increase that feeling of being connected. And sometimes women need to feel connected in order to even want to have sex. So sometimes you get to this crossroads where you're not having any sex at all, and then neither of you feel connected, and you both end up feeling distant and resentful. And the person that wants the least amount of sex actually has the most control of the relationship. Oh, yeah. So there's got to be at some point a place and a space where you can at least have the opportunity to be connected. If it's going to happen, you at least have to carve out a couple hours a week where there's going to be at least, you know, a moment where you're going to cross paths and be naked together. And so I do believe that setting aside one night or one afternoon or one morning when you're going to be naked in the same room, whether you fall asleep in each other's arms or whether you end up taking a shower together, and just be grateful that there's no kids around. It's not so important that you like get to the finish line and have intercourse and reach orgasm. What's more important is that you carve out that time together so that you're not just roommates and parents all week, that there's a little tiny window when you remember, oh yeah, we're more than just that. And I agree that having empathy when it doesn't really feel like it's working all that well during that time because one of you falls asleep or the other one is just, you know, spurting breast milk all over the place and not feeling sexy. I agree, you know, like connecting over that too can be really kind of sensual.
Yeah, and there's like somebody saying, oh, you know, I know you had a really tough day, I understand breastfeeding is really hard. Like, I think that, at least for women, that kind of gets you going. I think that's for everybody. You know, like, there's nothing more feels better than having somebody understand that you had a tough day, right?
I think that's really true.
And understanding being home with children is just as tough, and I would vote for tougher than being at any office that I've ever been to.
I'm sure, yes.
Tammy, there's something you touched on when you talked about the couple who's not wanting sex, or the partner who's not wanting sex, being the one who has the most control in the sexual relationship. And I want to describe something that I call the devil's pact that happens. The most common thing, I think you might agree with me, Tammy, that couples present in sex therapy is what I call a high desire, low desire dynamic. Somebody wants it and somebody doesn't. And so what happens is, after the one who wants it more often, who's pressuring, and don't always assume the gender, it can be either way, but the one who wants it is pressuring the person until finally the person who doesn't want it says, you know what, I would be into it if you just stop whining and begging, because this is not sexy to me, so I just want you to, you know, leave me alone, and when I'm ready, I'll come to you. And now they've entered this terrible no man's land called the devil's pact, where everybody's walking around on eggshells and nobody is getting their needs met. Tammy, when you see a couple who hits that stage, what is your best advice?
Well, you know, it's almost like the previous question. My best advice is take sex off the table 6 days a week and make the 7th day your sex date, and do it whether you feel like it or not. Show up for that sex date, whether you hate each other, whether you're tired, whether you're sick, whether you argued, whether you are into it, whether you feel sexy, whether you are in the mood, whether you had a hard day at work, whether there's something better on TV. You show up because it's 7 o'clock and it's Sunday night, and you light the candles and you put on the music and you wear something sexy, and you show up because that's the commitment that you made to your partner, that you're more than just roommates, that you're lovers. And frankly, you probably would have picked a better roommate if you were just together.
Do you recommend people have sex with somebody they don't want to have sex with?
I don't recommend anybody ever have sex with someone they don't want to have sex with, but I do recommend that if you want to be in love with someone and not just love them, that you have to make a commitment to the erotic aspect of your relationship and not just the companionship. Because the companionship is what makes you feel like, okay, I love this person and they're a good friend. But it's the erotic piece that makes you feel passionate and alive, and that eros energy that gives you the reason to stick around and to feel in love. But that doesn't mean you have to ever force yourself. If you don't feel like having sex with someone, I always ask the other person who's frustrated, you know, they never want to have sex. I always want to have sex, they don't want to. I always ask that person, well, what are you doing to make them want to show up to the party? If they don't want to show up, what are you doing to convince them that this could be a good time for them? And so that's always my next question of, well, when you guys do have sex, how is it? You know, are you both having orgasms? Is it pleasurable for both of you? You know, why is that person avoiding it? Is it because you want to have sex 3 times a day and they want to have it 3 times a month? Or is it really that during those 3 times a month, it's not that satisfying? I would want to know a lot more information about that.
Yeah, maybe during those 3 times a month, one person's being the taker and not necessarily the giver. And let me ask you this, Tammy. You know, I think the biggest buzzkill in a sexual relationship is anger. There's no better way to stop the juices flowing than to have underlying anger in a relationship. What do you say to couples who haven't worked through those issues and are really mad at each other?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's really hard to climb over that big pile of resentment in the middle of the bed. It really piles up. And how do you get over that giant, you know, pile that builds up? Because, you know, once we work through this pile of resentment, then I'll want to have sex with you. But by then, you've already done 16 other things that I'm mad about, and we haven't worked through all those things. And plus, there's a big pile of dishes, and the kid is crying, and the stars are not all aligned, and I have my period. And, you know, so there's a lot of things to get through that have now built up over time. And that's not even really anger. Which is what you're talking about. That's just day-to-day resentment because you didn't pick up your socks and you said this mean thing to me and you weren't there for me when I needed you. But if you're talking real anger, like real unresolved arguments and, you know, hurt and real wounding, those are things that have to be resolved in order to find a really true, intimate relationship. But I also, can I just say one more thing?
Uh-huh.
I also want to caution women. All of us on this panel are women. So I just want to throw something out there from the male perspective to speak for the man, because I think we tend to look at this as therapists and as women from such a female perspective that we all have to be connected emotionally in order to have sex, and, you know, we can't be mad in order to have sex. A lot of this day-to-day resentment and frustration goes away when we're having really good sex with our partner. You know, we all feel better and more connected when our sex life is going well. And men know that. Men have that secret. And so they kind of, you know, they kind of look at us like, well, if we just had sex, we would get along so much better. And we resent that. We're like, no, we want to feel connected first. But there's something to be said for that, for thinking about sex in a little bit more of a masculine way. And we don't have to work through all of our resentment in order to have good sex. And it's okay to have sex when you're angry. You know, that idea of don't go to bed mad.
As long as you don't find yourself biting spontaneously.
Well, some people are into that, Wendy. You know, some people get off on that. That's okay, too.
That's true. Now, one of the things about that I've read in the research is that women actually prefer more sexual novelty than men. In other words, women need to have, and they need to have the environment. We need to have the candles. We need to have the right lingerie. We need the right lighting. We need the right massage oil. We need a whole show to happen. And guys are pretty good at just getting the pipes clean. You know, they don't need to have the whole event. Do you agree with me?
I don't know. I've never really heard that before, but it kind of makes sense. I think, I mean, I don't know. I asked Leana too, but I think because women have a different levels of arousal, you know, they need to be aroused before they feel desire. And, you know, if you want to have sex with a woman on Saturday, you have to start on Wednesday.
I agree.
So maybe, you know, we need all the accoutrements to sort of build up those levels of arousal. And men are kind of, you know, this is a gross, you know, overgeneralization, but maybe they feel that level of arousal and desire in a different way, maybe quicker, maybe without the necessity for all those things.
Absolutely. They're a microwave oven. We're a crock pot. So we need those few days to get warmed up. Leana, what do you find the people who are coming to Kids in the House and talking about their relationships and their sex lives, what kinds of solutions are you hearing from all the great experts you have on your site?
Well, you know, we just interviewed John Gray. One of the things that kind of...
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yes. You know, one of the things he talked a lot about that kind of really was like an aha moment for me is that, you know, you really have to kind of tell a guy what you want him to do and then, like, praise him for doing it. Like
training a puppy dog, isn't it?
What?
It's just like training a puppy dog. It's a nice reward.
We kind of become resentful. You know, we kind of get into that thing of telling him he's not good enough. No, but what you have to do is kind of tell him what to do and then tell him he's good enough, because all he wants to do is be good enough. But, you know, you start out the relationship and you think he's the greatest thing, and then once you have a baby and he doesn't do enough and doesn't help out, and a lot of times when he does help out, we don't feel like he's doing it the way we wanted to. So one of the, like I said, one of the great aha moments was hearing him say that, you know, we really have to tell him what to do and then tell him he's doing a really good job.
That's a really, really good point. You know, I think humans respond to positive rewards better than negative rewards anyway. Despite all the parents out there who still spank their kids, if you just incentivize the kid toward good behavior, I think you'd have better results. And the same goes with your relationship, really, that you can get better behavior by, well, I always use the term, watering what you want to grow and not watering the weeds.
Yes. Oh, that feels so good. That, yes. Oh, thank you for helping out. Or
That's right. You did so good. And, you know, and reminding, because more than anything, it also reminds yourself of why you fell in love with that person. So if you can find a way to, when you're going through a rocky time in your relationship, if you can find a way to find and say 3 nice things to your partner and about your partner every single day, you're actually starting to rewire your own brain. You're reminding yourself why you fell in love, and it shifts your thinking as much as it helps them.
Yeah, that's something he speaks about too. He says, you know, you have to go, oh, that's so good, and, you know, you did that so well, which we start out by doing, and then we forget about. Another thing that I hear parents saying, which I think is a really good one, is to kind of make the little moments. As a parent, it's so overwhelming, and you might just have 10 minutes, but you kind of have to make use of those moments to make your partner feel appreciated, to make, you know, maybe, you know, the date night thing is not realistic for everybody because everybody can't afford, you know,
the child care and the expensive restaurants.
They can't afford, you know, you know, and it's complicated with, you know, if you have 3 or 4 kids with their schedule and everything, is to still kind of stay focused on the, you know, moments in between and making a card or, like, you know, taking whatever you can get, you know, the 10 minutes here and there, which is kind of good advice too, I think.
Mm-hmm. It really means just being present, you know, being mindful in your relationship, and it takes nothing but a few minutes to stop and focus. I mean, certainly in parenting, mothers are supposed to stop and give their kids a few minutes of undivided focus and undivided time and attention every single day. And I think that we should be doing that with our partner as well. So, Tammy, I have another question for you. What about couples who are in what I call a sexual desert? It's been a long time and nothing's happened, and now they've gotten into this place where nobody's been having sex and maybe even years have gone by. Right. Do these couples have a chance of reigniting passion?
I think anyone, even couples in what we call a sexless marriage, have the capacity to, you know, re-inspire their sex life. And I think it goes to what you guys have been saying, which I think is really smart. You know, the way you change your sex life, even if it's been a desert, like you said, is to really know the secret, which is you always get more of what you appreciate. You know, the way that you change your sex life is not to say I hate it when you go to the left, but to say I love it when you go to the right. And to know that you will always get more of the things that you point out that your partner's doing well. And it does work particularly well with men, because men have always been focused on their achievements since they were children, you know, their actions. They've been human doings instead of human beings. You know, their actions have always been rewarded or criticized. And so it goes to really the heart of who they are as a person. Differently than women, we've been sort of socialized to be in relationship. So, you know, you can cut us out of the herd and that kills us.
Right, we don't like that.
We don't like that at all. And threaten our relationships, we don't like that at all either. But I think, you know, anyone who has the desire to be sexual or to be connected or to be sensual, I usually start people who haven't been sexual for a long time with like a 6-week program where they meet once a week and start with some kind of sensual touch. But I tell them no intercourse for 6 weeks. That's the rule. And sometimes they go against what I say just because it's illicit and forbidden. And
you just created the world's biggest aphrodisiac, the word no.
Exactly. It's forbidden, so that's exciting. But I tell people go slow, and, you know, I have a whole protocol of things you do every, you know, once a week for 6 weeks. And by the time you get to the end of the 6 weeks, you've sort of built up that energy again. But you have to sort of go in slow, just with touch, non-sexual touch, just sort of sensual touch. And anyone who has any interest in doing that, of course, can do it. I think it's a different question than what if you've never really had a sexual attraction and you've kind of always just been companions and friends, versus what if you really had it and then it was gone? Or the third scenario is, what if there's been an affair or some kind of big betrayal?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
You have a great, your book on the new monogamy really breaks down how people can redefine their relationship after infidelity. So break it down for us, Dr. Tammy Nelson. How do we do it?
Oh, in 30 seconds or less?
Yeah.
10 words or less?
There's a great interview on Kids in the House, the long version.
There's a bunch of great interviews on Kids in the House. I mean, brilliant videos that they do, and I really appreciated how great they did with interviewing me on these really important topics, because I think it's really scary to think that you could work on a relationship after infidelity. Can it really work, or should you just leave? Because all your friends and family are going to tell you should leave. You know, once a cheater, always a cheater. But I don't know.
But that's not always true?
I don't think it's always true. I think some affairs are what I call can openers, and they're meant to leave the relationship. You know, that's why you do it. You want out, and you don't even consciously know it maybe, but the relationship's over. For other people, sometimes an affair is a wake-up call, and sometimes people say, you know, that might have been the best thing that could have happened to us, and it was a way to wake us up and learn how to re-engage, repair, learn how to communicate. And I will tell you that if you're listening to this and throwing things at the screen right now because that's so hurtful, I understand, and that means that you're in the crisis phase, and that phase will pass. And there's a next phase, which is the insight phase, where you start to figure out, like, how did this happen to us and why? And if you get through that with a good therapist, there's a third phase where you get to create a new vision of a new relationship that the two of you get to decide, how is this one going to be? And you get to work on that together. And that's really the crucial phase where you really can create a new relationship.
You know, I was reading research on couples who have been able to overcome infidelity, and those that were most successful, the partner who was cheated on tended to minimize the event. And that doesn't mean to dismiss it, but they didn't turn the event into an opportunity to assume that their partner was completely untrustworthy in everything in life. They didn't slander him and her for everything possible. They basically remembered that the person was a good person who they loved, who'd made a mistake, and this is a challenge and something to work through. And couples who were able to have the cheated on partner kind of minimize is the word that was used in the research, but I would say sort of isolate the affair as an affair, not that the person is all bad, tended to have better success at overcoming infidelity. Have you found this, Tammy?
I find that the people that really make it are people that use language like, this happened to us. Not this was your affair, you did this to me, but that this happened to us. This was our affair. This was something that happened throughout the lifetime of a longer-term relationship where many things happened. There were many hurts and many betrayals and many wonderful things, and this was part of our story. And the people who make up a story about the meaning of the affair, where it's all about what you did to me, absolutely get stuck in that space of, you know, betrayal, and that usually triggers old pain from the past and maybe from their childhood. But look, we all make up a story about an affair. When it happens to you, you make up a story about what it means, and you make up a story about what your partner meant when they did it. And there's 3 different stories. There's my story, there's your story, there's a story you make up about the relationship, and none of them match.
Right.
So there's a lot going on there. And you know what? The only thing I could say in this context for people, if you're suffering, is all those stories will change over time. And if you want to, you can have a whole new marriage going forward. The bad news is that the marriage that you're in now is definitely over, because this was not the marriage that you wanted. It wasn't the vision that you had. And I mean that with all due respect. But you can have many marriages within the lifetime of your marriage, and that's the good news. This is just one of many within a long-term relationship, and the next one could be even better.
So inspiring. Dr. Tammy Nelson, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I suggest anyone watching get her books. The new Monogamy is the newest one, and the other is Getting the Sex You Want. Is that correct? Did I get the titles right?
Yeah, you got it.
All available online in bookstores. And Leana Greene, always a pleasure to have you here, my good friend and founder of kidsinthehouse.com. If you're a parent, you've got to log on to kidsinthehouse.com. You can do a keyword search and come up with pretty much any subject in parenting, and there will be an expert who will give you a video, a very short, quick video that will explain to you how to basically fix your parenting problem. Laura Hampikian, so good to see you here. And next week we'll be back on with more Wine with Dr. Wendy on Wednesday night. So join us at 8 o'clock Pacific every Wednesday, right here on Google Hangouts. Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Thanks,
Bye.
Leana. Thanks, Laura.